The project of understanding painstaking life of adolescence. In South Korea too, there are known cases many children are treated as mental health problem and it is popularized from television programs. This is special case is what the experience of children, it is often maternal effect and causative experiences to be misappreciated to their lifetime difficulties. As an example, child can shout in low tone when he was taking foods at school, his past was to go to psychiatric facility at the age of 2 or 3 years old. This special case means rather than understanding, crazy dude, according to Nietzschean thought, individualization is requirement. There are many academic pros diversely interpreting about this topic, many of them can research it as healthy mode of life confronting when necessary, which is mental health area what is referential to the children. The unhealthy mode of life acquainted by pressure of others, we can help him positive ways, and when health was harmed by others, we can help him positive ways. If the children can be developing intellectual endeavor, we can see the case as according to the cultures until 1990s Korean people could maintain. To let him learning philosophy and Nietzschean text is read as text, as West philosophical tradition also researched. In this diagnosis progress, personality is core of understanding, so there would be moment of selecting either Wittgenstein or Nietzsche. The examination could be like this. The surprising sense is that even when children choose Nietzsche, they can do like Nietzschean philosophers, as existentialist point of view, so we do not necessarily feel it is strange. In other area, psychological understanding is same way too. The line of thought thinking about Nietzsche in this way, we can develop the way supporting the children can be integrated with the thought which is apparently confrontative, but can be friends of them. The way could be counseling philosophy can do, analytic philosophy also can do positive appreciation of Nietzschean thoughts, or mental health professionals too. This line of thought is also understood as friends' advice, the meaning of it, then we can approve children's life wreckages and salvation could be possible. Nehamas and others also support this view, this is difference between philosophy and other areas. In other words, Nietzschean thought is understood as metaphor, ordinary life's languages, and when we approve it we can save children to their energy confronting according to biased common sense that makes him confrontative to anything. The principle of individuation is this way possible, the healthy mode of life could be armed with him, with the help of philosophical thoughts. Think about why some children are embraced by psychological community, this is another version in philosophy. Particular and universal, and singular particular. Nietzsche argues on individuation principle from the birth of tragedy. It is full of metaphor, tiny boat calm in the torrent of sea passed by. The extension of this metaphor is talking about screenwriters and artists' meaning of it. The untimely meditations, the metaphor is continued to. When we cognize object and subject, although morally we are doing so, if we treat it as aggregation, that is, madman, crisis, and so on, there would be unmatching ideas the aggregation cannot understand right time about individual differences. If we concern Nietzschean idea about this that evil habits held by humankind in general. The snob likes candy so much. We sometimes conclude this way. In this case too, if ordinary cultures, the snob is understanding metaphor to think it as particular, causatively manner. The logics behind these thoughts are logical so conceptually we can understand. The snob, candy, or understanding about it, is universal depending on conception, the signifier is particular, so there is something like proof of meaning when such belief takes on. Nietzsche is talking about this in the untimely meditations. In this condition, what Nietzsche was talking about is not universal itself as generalized conceptions, the special conditions we can fall into delusions or illusions treating someone's personality. The ordinary way of using language would be true even when confrontative to academic ideas. The songs introduced from Mr. about the songs amalgamated with Korean traditional genre with Western-style touches, would be considered as refreshing, this is artistic turn about meditative individualization, this is one case of how popular music can be founded as affirmative inquiries. Wagner is different from art, in this case, what is talking about is understanding the revelations how the children experienced by the general understandings before 2000s Korea. German cultures understood by Nietzsche. The difference between France and the US Derrida thought about. The understanding of jazz affirmed by Sartre. The difference between sensibility and Gedanke in analytic philosophy. These things are all metaphor in some conditions, suggesting their understanding to objects and subjects around the world, talking about particular in the language of universal. The commitment of famous people, why it is arouse popular blame on it, such as similarly revelation of the children had to walk through their lifetime. The universal and particular, could be a proving principle of individuation, as affirmative compensation. I see also some restrictions to children's way of expression compared over fully liberalized adults. We should take universal in some rates, although there is contradictions and discrepancy in Nietzschean thoughts. We can embrace him as psychiatric appreciation, we can read the text as salvation to the children. The Korean way of schooling, such as gangster students and grading school mates as fight skills, stealing to the shop, otaku crimes, by not only boy, baksabang sakon, we say in Nietzschean words too, but the principle of individuation, we discriminate the children to restrict their freedom of speaking. The context of this experience can be ameliorated when we embrace him as affirmative compensation to let him read Nietzsche and inquires how he can develop his academic career. This is also supported by some Korean scholars as healthy mode of life, which is not only self-help, we can utilize it as context to affirmative compensations. In this case, the principle of individuation is not harmful to the children's life. The particular and universal are this meaning too. Conversely, when we talk in analytic philosophical way, some scholars objectified languages of particular, compared over universal. The similarly line of talk is from the untimely meditations. Germany, France, US, Candy, Old Folk, the understanding is from the universal, because it is language. This is aroused when information is lacking, aroused from positional differences, it is particular dimension. The mentioning in the untimely mediations, about David Strauss, it is also in Korean way of ordinary languages. The visionary eyes passing through thyself. The cheek in pink color. I love you. In this case, universal is what we would like to see further to get the particular is what. Neutrally speaking, both the speakers and listeners feel intuitively stucking sense too. The traditional folk understanding or some normative history of humankind were so. The understanding about morality, is it evaluative or legitimate? This is also talked in analytic philosophy, it is ontologically normative foundations in any attempts of it, the gist or usage are concerned, we can read it as metaphor, because it is text reading, so we can move on to rescue purposiveness to understand particular singular, individuation as Strawson also talked about. The understanding of particular singular, for example, we can read Nietzsche as observation of his writings. In other words, when we read Nietzsche as context, we can salvate children as affirmative compensation, to inquire how they think about it. If you still read this statement as normative harm, your usage is so. To convert more loosened term, 한국식대로 하지마. Why you think it as Korean way? 인디언 바드커. 제주는 곰이 넘고 도는. The circus is performed by bear and money. These kind of expressions are also founded in Nietzschean tradition as context culture, we can distinct what is universal and what is particular and when we should utilize it. Nietzsche critiques to real name in his text, this can be read as normative ontological conditions are exposed directly to make conversation more effectively. The event-specific, Nietzsche desired to say, it is individuation, this is what experiences are dimensions, and it is not contradiction but discrepancy. In ordinary languages, we did it too. In my position, we should set rescue purposiveness first when we read this way. This is also true that children had chronicle symptoms of painstaking life could understand Nietzschean contexts as reality but not harmful, so discussion about universal and particular can break some restrictions in understanding their lives. The biased view also based on universal and particular. 나 아니야, 정말 아니야, I am not so, really not. The boy shouted in low tone reported in the television programs, we can compensate the child's painstaking efforts by letting him learning Nietzsche too. The autonomy is his award. This is also true that analytic philosophers often go with Nietzschean reductionism, the thesis is similar to the supportive argument with behaviorism. The more plausible position is to be emergentism, conditional reduction as medical researches, cf. medicine, and so on. This case is what we can distinct universal and particular differences, how we synthesize both ones. The analytic philosophy, Nietzsche, reductionism, behaviorism, these kind of universal is just apparatus of understanding, the way of compensating healthy and affirmation to the child. The perfect enclosement is not possible in some cases, because corresponding truths were harmed in his, her life. If we use universal as rescue purposive mind. Korean study well. This is affirmative, but Koreans are too agitative. This is critiques, but reality as well. Korean people have backlashes about the expressions above, because it is what we say replaced particular to universal. The nuances are so means we can have intuitive worries what will be continued to the future. The children's painstaking life are so too. In this way, we can read Nietzsche in analytic philosophy too, as context of painstaking compensations, and argue about it.